Hello again, Jason Snider here with the Profitable Manufacturer Show today. I'll be flying solo again today. Annette is still away. Hopefully in a week or two, she will be back here with me co-hosting. And today I have a guest, Sharon Cusler, Inventory Optimization Pro, consultant and professional. And we're going to just dive right into things and let Sharon introduce herself, tell a little bit about her background and her story. And then we'll get into the details of inventory and profitability for businesses. Sharon.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Sharon Cusler, and I'm an inventory optimization consultant specialized in e-commerce. If you are facing cash flow challenging or profitability issues, I would like to talk to you. I have a special methodology to help you to optimize your inventory to increase your cash flow and profitability.
Yeah. And so she'll be diving into some of those details, sharing about some of those things that she does. So maybe Sharon, tell us a little bit where you're located and how you got into this, into doing this type of consulting.
Well, I was fortunate enough that I joined a global multinational company, as a manufacturing company, and learned quite a lot. I was in the position of marketing analyst, and that job, it was in detail of demand forecast and profitability. That's how I started my career. And later on, I had my own wholesale business, and because we don't have bank finance, it's a small family business, and we facing cash flow issues. And mind you that I have business background, and it was challenging for me to run my own business. And then I realized that it's not just about reading a profit loss statement. It's not about balance sheet. It's about cash flow. How you manage your cash flow is the key to survive in small business. That's how I started my inventory optimization consulting business here.
I think everybody in our audience is, at least in a startup or started a smaller business, has experienced that, where the cash flow ends up being the king, if you will. Many of us, when we first started, don't know how to read a P&L, how it affects, and then especially when we dive into it more later, inventory management and how it affects drastically in a big way cash flow for the smaller businesses as well as the bigger ones as well. So we'll start up with it. Since we're talking about cash flow management, demand forecasting. We were chatting a little bit about that earlier before we started the show. Tell us a little bit about how that affects businesses. And you mentioned about e-commerce businesses, but also manufacturing businesses, of demand forecasting and why that's so important for cash flow.
Demand forecast is extremely important. People may think, oh, you never be able to forecast anything anyway. What's the point to do demand forecast? I would say this is an exercise that you have to do on a regular basis, so that you put a pause on your business and feel the market. If you don't, you will lose the touch. And the demand forecast, obviously, the first thing is your revenue, how much money is coming in. That means your cash flow. And demand forecast also means your bottom line, how much it will cost you to run your business and buy your inventory. So doing demand forecast is must.
And I would say for demand forecast, like you mentioned, you can't predict exactly the future, but that's why we do business planning and quarterly planning, and some businesses do annual planning and longer term strategic planning. It's an exercise to at least consider the future and where you want to go direction. You're just not going to be pulled along by things. You should also be pushing along things, and this would be part of that structure of planning, being purposeful and intentional with your business and things. So definitely. On the cash flow, tell us a little bit about how that helps with cash flow management, projecting forward, demand forecast of what your product's going to be, available manufacturing loads and other things that we have to consider, how does that help plan for cash flow for businesses?
For planning means you want to be proactive, looking at the situation and alert the issues may rise in the near future, right? So demand forecast in a way is that you understand where is your cash is coming from and how much and when. And then when you know your demand forecast, you break it down to SKU level, meaning that you would understand how much will cost you per unit and how many quantity that you're going to produce. No matter your demand forecast is top down or bottom up, in the end, you have to break it down to SKU level so that you take care of your revenue, cash in, and you take care of your cost of goods sold, cash out. And that affects your profit and also affects your cash flow.
Yeah, definitely. We had several situations with clients of managing inventory when we had more severe supply chain issues. I know there's a lot of it still going on, but I think it was more pronounced a few months ago, a year and a half ago, in that time range. And working with clients and planning how to forecast the demand and then also the needs, because they weren't sure themselves. And it was I know several clients were over ordering on purpose because they weren't sure when the next delivery cycle was going to be able to take place. And then so it's definitely, I'd say it was a little bit more stressful and unusual the last couple of years, but this is part of that process. At least you have some visibility in what's going on in your business under there so that you can focus on this particular area. And then the next thing we were going to talk about was top down, bottom up. Maybe explain a little bit for some of us who aren't as familiar with those different processes. Give us a little overview, and then we can kind of go into the details of why it's important to choose one.
Okay. I maybe break it down in a very simple term. Top-down forecast, meaning that you have a general idea, say you are going to make $1 million for the first month or the whole year, whatever that is. And then you break it down what SKU is going to make how much. If, say, SKU 1, you're going to make $10,000, and then you break it down, say every item is $100, and then you have 1,000 units, right? So whatever that is, sorry about my math, I know I'm wrong. but what I'm saying is that you use that dollar sign to break it down to the unit, and that's called top down. And by the number of the unit, if each unit costs you $10, then you know how much profit that you have. That's called top down estimate. The bottom up is that that the demand, some of the B2B business is pretty predictable in some sense. Like say, you are going to produce 1,000 units this month because customer Jason just ordered 1,000 units for the next month's demand. Then it's bottom up, and then you know how much it costs you, and then you know how much you want to charge to estimate your revenue and cash flow in that way. But that's theoretically, it's really simple term to explain, but the reality could be more complex than that. My recommendation is, if it's possible, is bottom up is more realistic than the top down. It's more closer to the reality, what you're going to expect. So what happens is that you can do the bottom up first and know how much costs you and how much sales you're expecting. And then based on the market trend from the top down and see what's the difference there, kind of scrub the number to get a number that you're comfortable with, if that makes sense. You have questions, Jason?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's what we're really looking for when I'm working with clients is to provide clarity on cost and cost of goods or those types of things. We're trying to provide clarity. It's not going to be exact like we were talking about earlier. those that are searching for exactness, I think, are missing the point of doing exercises like this. And planning is, you're not going to be 100%. You want to get a clear enough picture so you can make an informed, knowledgeable decision or decisions and planning for the future.
Yes. Either way, you do top down or bottom up, you have to break it down to SKU level so you know your production planning, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And that might be a good lead into our next of production planning and passive versus proactive inventory ordering. I think this is interchangeable. I know many of our clients that we've worked with in the past are e-commerce, where they're ordering a finished product and need to be available on Amazon. But this also applies to manufacturing businesses as well, of having enough materials, production materials or raw materials, whatever their process is. So let's talk about passive versus proactive inventory ordering.
Inventory planning is very crucial to your cash flow. Cash flow in the way that if it's like inventory planning, that to the point that if you are passively seeing the system telling you to reorder, you're missing out. You're putting your profit on the table, you're putting out your cash on the table. The reason is that when the system really alerts you that inventory is low, it could be too late because you don't pay attention the lead time of your raw material. If there's any abnormal situation coming up or things that you need to consider, you just kind of passively click the button, wait until the problem comes, and then you solve that. And when that comes, then you will have back order problems. You miss your sales. That means that will affecting your top line and bottom line at the same time. If you order the wrong thing, or you have a lot of slow move inventory that you don't really pay attention to organize it, that definitely will affect your top line, bottom line at the same time, because you spend money in warehouse at the same time that you don't have enough cash to roll the next inventory purchase. That will affect your top line as well. So that don't be the passive one to manage your inventory. You should proactively manage the inventory so you know when to expect your cash coming in to buy your inventory.
Yeah, and like a lot of things, it's being intentional and purposeful. Obviously, we're big fans of Profit First and implementing that and teaching that and setting it up for businesses. And that's being intentional with our cash, where it's going, what it should be doing. Every dollar has a home. And I tell clients many times that inventory is cash sitting on your shelves or in your warehouse or wherever it ends up being. It's dollars sitting there not really doing anything. And so there's a balance between selling through your inventory, but also making sure you have enough in case there's unexpected demand spikes and things. And it's been very challenging the last year and a half, 2 years in managing those things, and makes it even more important to be proactive in this process. And so maybe help us decide, or help to determine of how often do we correct. Is it something we should look at weekly, daily? Obviously, it's going to depend on the size and complexity of the business, but how some ways that some of our viewers can develop those processes, or work with somebody like yourself to come up with those internal processes to be proactive.
That's correct.
All right, next, let's go over timing of inventory and production. We were talking a little bit about proactive and passive. Now, timing. If we're being proactive and knowing that when to do things, is that something you work with clients on, helping develop those systems and stuff? And what can you share with the audience?
Timing is really important in inventory, especially when you have a small components that is not interchangeable. For example, if you are in private label, you are selling consumer packaging goods, food, whatever. You have cherry flavor, orange flavor. The labels look similar, but you cannot put orange flavor with cherry flavor label on it, right? So those two labels cannot be interchanged. Then there comes the issues that it's really tedious, it's really small inventory count. I mean, you probably won't consider label as an important inventory to even think about it because the value is so low. But at the same time, you need to consider how to order it in the time is right. You don't want to wait for that such a long lead time to wait for the labels and delay your production time. When you are idly waiting in that shipping time or whatever time for the label, you are putting out more cash to run your daily business. The operating fixed cost is running when you are waiting for your label. So you have to consider that timing is very important. At the same time, you're not ordering too much of the same label and then you cannot use that. For example, if a cherry sell more and orange sell less, but you have a lot of label for orange, what are you going to do with it? Does that make sense? So you have constantly to manage that to make sure that you order quite just enough, not too much, not too little.
Yeah, because either way would cause cash disruptions, especially if it's a major item or a cash intensive process. So if you don't have enough, then you can't continue fulfilling orders. But if you have too much, it's cash sitting on the shelf like we were talking about before. So yeah, it's almost sounding like that it needs to be an ongoing process that somebody's paying attention to on a consistent basis. And that those systems and processes are reviewed maybe on a quarterly basis or something like that to ensure that they're delivering that optimization as that we're talking about.
Yes, you have to find your own frequency to make sure that everything is run smooth. You can't say you can't say that I'm looking at my inventory every week or every day. You know, maybe once a month in general. You know, some of the things you look at once a quarter, but definitely you can't just drag it to the once a year because sometimes once a year it's too late to notice any problems.
And I liken it to startups for those who have been through the startup process or bootstrapping process of especially early on, I'm checking cash on a daily basis. When's my next cash coming in? Who do I have to pay? And then it kind of lengthens up to weekly once there's a little bit more stability in revenue and got systems and processes and people in place to manage parts of the business. And then eventually extends out to monthly if I've got team members that are managing the finances for us. So I think it sounds like it's a similar process as you're in the beginning. You got to be a lot more hands-on if you're in that phase of startup and bootstrapping to be more involved in that. Okay.
Yes. And then I gotta echo what Jason you just said is inventory is cash sitting on the shelf. It is true.
Yeah. All right. Next item we wanted to cover was inventory management software versus Excel. When we were talking earlier, you sounded pretty passionate about this particular approach, and maybe share with us from obviously you work with many different clients in this space, and so there's probably some things that you've seen and would be you could share with the audience of why it's important for inventory management software. But go to first covering why is it superior to the Excel that we were talking about earlier.
I would say everyone has different habit or method or things like that. But I mean, Excel is a great tool. I'm not going to deny that. But the problem comes is that Excel has less, I don't know if that's a good word, security in a way that if that file collapsed, that is it. And that also, the other problem with Excel is that if you spend more than 2 hours a day to look at your inventory and to manage it. And when you know that you only have, I don't know, 20 SKU, that's not a lot, then manual processing is not the way to go. You can use that 2 hours to do many other more productive activities for your business. And the accuracy of inventory is another thing. Why I'm talking about accuracy is not just the unit count, how many is order in, how many is order out, things like that. It is more the accuracy of cost of goods sold.
Right.
When your business to some extend to a certain level, your cost of goods sold will get really complicated, from the shipping, from the labor handling, tax, all kinds of stuff that will lump it all together as a cost of goods sold, whatever expense that is, and that comes in a different time. And you don't want to be the person or hire another person to manage that. Does that make sense? You still need to manage it, but you need to manage it in a way that is accurate and fast. Right. And that's when the inventory management system come into the place. That's when you need to use a inventory app or inventory software to help you to manage. The key reason of using inventory management system is that you want to have an accurate cost of goods sold. Okay, so when your cost of goods sold is inaccurate, when you forget to register things or put things in the wrong place or whatever that reason is not registered, then your unit cost is incorrect. You cannot predict your cash flow correctly. Your profit and loss profit margin is inaccurate. You cannot make business decision. Obviously, your balance sheet, your inventory value asset is incorrect. So your whole financial report is in the rack. You can't make any business decision. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. And I'll add a couple things to that directly from experience. One is almost all of our clients that I'm working with on Profit First, I'd say 80-90% of them have issues with gross margin, meaning it's not where it needs to be to cover our overhead and operating expenses. And whenever I hear a client coming to me and tell me, hey, should I cut back on these operating expenses where I can't really cut too much back, it's almost always a gross margin issue where there's a lack of clarity on their pricing strategies because they don't have all of the direct costs accounted for in their cost of goods and gross margin calculations there. So yeah, it's a big priority for us when we're going into and setting up Profit First for the first time in a business is getting visibility on the cost of goods. And the second thing I'll say is you were talking about don't make yourself the linchpin of your cost of goods calculations. If you're doing it in Excel, it's likely you are the only one who knows that process. And so on our bookkeeping side, I can tell you from experience that when you do it manual, it takes a lot more discipline to maintain that. Inaccuracy of data collection will cause errors down the road because your cost, like you were talking about cost of goods calculations, if it's erratic, if your data collection is erratic, it's going to give you erratic data, which then you're basing other decisions on. So that's where the Excel, if you want to be a lot involved in manual, doing a lot of work, and that has its place, I'd say early on in the beginning, but look to have a process or a way to migrate to some type of inventory management software at some point, or a big chunk of, so it relieves the stress internally of having to manage all that data consistently. Because if you change the collection of data, it's going to give you bad results. Okay? So definitely on board with what you're saying there.
I also want to give you a bonus tip, Jason.
Sure, let's hear it.
Let's talk about this. It's when you have very clear data to know your product mix, that product mix meaning the sales unit, right? And then the cost and the price or pricing tiers. That's the gold, when you have a cash flow issues, not only you're not making enough money, you don't know if you charge right or charge enough. You don't know if a certain item is giving you enough profit, because you got to remember, like, if every item give you $10 profit, but a item costs you $20 to make that $10 profit, B items make, use $5 to make that $10 profit. Which one do you prefer to sell more? Right? And you're going to spend more money to stock a item to make that $10. Then you might as well, if you can sell much more B items, you are going to make more money, right? And at the same time, if you see certain item move faster, if that faster item is making you $2, and then the other item make you $10 but sell slower, you have to make that comparison. It's like, am I losing more possibility to make more money because I'm keep making $2? If the same time frame you keep making more $10, you will make more profit than that you keep making that $2, if that makes sense.
Right. Yep.
So the
mix.
the money is in the detail. If you always just financially just look at the bigger picture, like, okay, just start that cost of goods sold, whatever the accounting software or inventory software tell me that the cost of goods sold is $10,000, and that's the financial report, and keep going. You are not going to optimize your profit that way, because that's what you're expected, and that's the old way. When you have if you keep doing your old behavior, you are not going to expect have anything new.
Right. Yeah. If you keep doing the same thing but expecting different results, I think that's another definition of insanity. Thinking the same way but expecting different results. And so that's why, like we were talking about earlier, of having places to review. I think this is our systems and processes to review how things are working, and it's important to have that discipline. In going back to what we were just talking about earlier, the inventory management software versus Excel, both of them have their place. It's just looking forward to the future. As your business grows, scales, you want to be ahead of the curve when it comes to putting these systems in place, so that when takeoff happens or when scaling happens, that you've got those things in place, so it's not as chaotic. It's always going to be chaotic, but let's try to reduce that as much as possible. And in my view, it's better to make those investments ahead of time if you have that trajectory or you have those plans to put these systems and processes in place.
I do want to mention about selecting inventory management system. If it's okay.
Sure, yeah, this is a common question that we have to struggle with in many cases. It's just speaking from the e-commerce side, where most of our work currently resides, it's been pretty challenging in getting something that works with. Many clients have the, hey, I want it to be perfect. And what I explained to them, like we were talking about earlier, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be, hey, it's going to handle 80% of it, and then you're going to have to build other SOPs or supporting processes around that. So it's a common discussion. Maybe we'd definitely like to hear your thoughts on how our viewers can make those decisions and evaluate those different platforms.
There are a few layers of it. First was the fear, like in general, smaller business, they have less or almost zero tolerance of mistake. So that when you select an inventory system, you kind of like put your heart to somebody that hopefully things will work out. I think the most important thing is that you need to choose a reputable software that been around for a while. That's number one. And the number two things is that you will say, oh, how do I know if this software fits my needs, my business is unique? I would say that write down your pinpoint of your management, your inventory management journey, from your purchasing all the way to, ship out your order, or even customer return service or things like that. Write it out, the key points that what really bothers you. Okay. Some of the business may be saying like, okay, I have one purchase order, one PO, and then there's 15, 20 shipments against one PO. And it's really confusing. And I cannot see my account payable, account receivable, or however that situation is, say account payable. Then you need to know like how your order is flowed, so you can ask right question to the software sales representative or whoever trying to give you the demo. You don't just sit there and listen there how great their features are or how great their inventory management system can solve your problems. You need to tell them your problem and let them show you how to solve the problem. So if it's a good fit, if it's smooth, then that's a good indication to give it a good try.
That sounds like a sound approach. Listing out your problems, the areas that you need to get resolved, and looking to the presenter or the salesperson, whoever the individuals that you're interacting with from the companies that you're talking to get that. Because like you said, it needs to resolve your problems. Like we talked about earlier, though, it's not going to resolve every single problem. I've yet to find a software that resolves all problems for all of our clients and customers that have these software needs and things. So don't have the super high expectations, but have a methodical, disciplined, well thought out approach so that you can make a well-informed decision on that.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end today. Any final thoughts and things you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap it up today?
I would like to share about my practice, how to manage cash to reorder inventory. You have to have a reserve for inventory repurchase. It's a percentage of your revenue or however you want to put it away, so that you don't caught in surprise when you need to buy the inventory that you don't have the money to buy it. Second thing, I think Jason already have this practice, the same thing as mine. You always have your bank account flow a certain way, like cash comes in, and then there's different pocket of different types of bank accounts for different purposes. But you don't cross shooting money to one to another. Is always flow to the same direction. So you have what's that called? I say it's a reserve account. And so if certain bank account is not enough for expense, and you're shooting the money back from the reserve account to that expense account, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's a profit first principle. Some of the terms we may use is a drip account, or you use the term reserve, which is very similar. That's definitely a practice in profit first. And for those of you that are working in profit first, talk to your advisor or your consultant or teacher in that. It's something that we utilize with many of our clients as well, as to smooth out, especially businesses that have seasonality, demand spikes, and then ordering, planning for those demand spikes, something that we use as well. So yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. And Sharon, where can people find out more about you and how you can work with businesses that have these needs?
Well, I welcome everybody to email me at hello@inventoryoptimization.pro. It is hello@inventoryoptimization.pro. Or you can DM me on LinkedIn. You can search for inventory optimization, or simply as the same handle on all my social media. I have TikTok, Facebook, I have Instagram, but I don't really get on Instagram. It's Inventory Optimization Pro. You can search on that. You can find me with on those social medias.
Great. Well, again, thanks for coming on today, Sharon, and sharing your knowledge with our audience. And we will be sharing this out through LinkedIn and things. So anybody who has questions about how to reach out to Sharon can look later on, and we'll be sharing that to connect with her. So thanks again, Sharon.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.